Loki the Gamer welcomes you to another set of Civilization 6 themed magic cards. My homemade cards based on Civ 6 that exist for the explicit purpose of listening to myself talk. The Kongo is the topic of the day. There are 6 cards as usual in the Kongo little mini set, a legendary land, 2 leaders, 2 unique builds, and 1 card based on a leader's agenda. The overview of the Kongo will give us something quite unique and interesting. It is a civ that cares about great works, relics, artifacts, not to be confused with artifacts from magic, but really artifacts that are dug up by archaeologists. The Civ 6 concept of artifacts, really. And sculptures. And as you can see from my equivalency chart, those concepts, those great works don't relate exactly to a specific magic concept. So I asked myself instead, where do they come from? What creates those relics, those artifacts, those sculptures? And I came up with an idea. Basically, these are all dead people. These are all people that have a certain number of charges, and when they get used up, or when they die in theological battle, in the case of relics, then they create their great work. So really, it translates to having dead, relevant creatures in your graveyard. More on that later, on that nice, not morbid at all concept later. And you can expect the Kongo to be citizen tribal. And the concept of continents, our good friend, the concept of continents, which also translates to question mark, question mark, question mark in this chart, will also come back here. So I had to be, like usual, very creative to translate a concept that really doesn't translate to magic at all into a magic concept. To summarize, the Kongo forced me to be very creative and innovative and artistic in a way, and let's take a look at that. I can't wait to share that with you. The color identity of the Kongo will be white and green, so a very peaceful culture based on growth. Lots of lush greenery in this sub-Saharan land that they occupy, so yeah, green and white seemed appropriate. The power of the Kongo in Civ 6 is the one that we were dreading, the one that required me to translate relics, artifacts, and sculptures into a magic concept. So again, I asked myself, where do relics come from? Well, they come from martyred apostles, so dead apostles with the martyr promotion, so that translates in my head to a dead cleric. Artifacts, where do those come from? Well, they come from archaeologists using up their charges to dig up artifacts, and those artifacts are often weapons from the past. So, weapon from the past, dead soldier. While finally sculptures, well, they come from used up great artists. So great artists who have used up all their charges, they've given you works of art, some of which might be sculptures, and now they're out of charges, so they're dead. So there we go, dead clerics, dead soldiers, dead artists. And great artists are great people, according to my chart, are legendary creatures. So we treat all legendary creatures as potential great artists. Dead, ideally. And so therefore, if you have one of those creatures in your graveyard, we can assume that they've used up their abilities to create one of those things for you, relic, artifact, sculpture. All you need to do now is to exile them from your graveyard in order to create the relic, artifact, sculpture. So just to prove that they're dead, you simply have to exile from your graveyard. So that's what I did. I turned the Kongo's ability into an exile the appropriate people from your graveyard to get, well, a whole bunch of bonus. The Kongo gets just about every conceivable kind of goodies from these relics, artifacts, and sculptures. So let's take a look at the Land of the Kongo, a rare legendary land that taps for a green. And the Nkisi ability reads, pay 2, exile a cleric, soldier, or legendary creature card from your graveyard, and tap the Kongo. Create a treasure token, a food token, and a green 1/1 peasant creature token with tap add a colorless. So you get your gold from the treasure token, you've got your food from the food token, you've got your food also in the form of having a creature token enter, and you've got your production in the form of, well, the ramping from the treasure counts, but also the fact that the peasants tap for a colorless. So you really have everything imaginable from making one of those thingamajigs that the Kongo cares so much about. So there you go, that's the creative approach I used to make the Kongo's ability into a magic card. Mvemba as Ninga, the original leader of the Kongo, has a religious convert ability. Now that is the very popular, well-known fact that he cannot found holy sites, he cannot found religions, he can't do anything religious unless it's someone else's religion. So he really wants to get everyone else's religion to come to his lands, and then he is very happy indeed. So that turns into an ability that, if you've watched other videos on my channel, if you've seen the India video, it's very similar to the India land that I created. As Indians also like to collect other people's religion, so does Mvemba's Ninga, Apostle of the Kongo. So a 1 white, 1 green, 2 generic, rare, human noble advisor, with stats 2-5, so more defensive than aggressive, seems to make sense for him. And his religious convert ability says, when an opponent gains life, you gain that much life. When an opponent scries, you scry that many cards. When an opponent creates a token, you create a copy of it. When an opponent puts a counter on a creature they control, you put a counter of the same kind on target creature you control. All those copyable powers are very varied because, well, religious powers in Civ 6 are incredibly varied. You really could gain science, you could gain culture, faith, military abilities, you name it, depending on the religious powers you chose for your religion. And Mvemba's Ninga is ready to copy all of those things at the drop of a hat. And you can do that for free. If you'll remember, the Land of India in my India video, in my India set, did very similar things, but each time you wanted to copy an ability of an opponent's, you had to tap a cleric. Mvemba does it for free. He deserves for his ability to be better, stronger, not because the Congolese are better than the Indian, I'm not trying to say that, but because he's a creature. He's a creature, he costs something, he's counterable, he's destroyable, he can be handled and neutralized much better than a land. So I know I have a soft spot for making lands that are too powerful, but I do acknowledge that they are hard to neutralize, and therefore I try to balance them out. And by making a creature like Mvemba's Ninga that can do essentially the same as the Indian land, but better, cheaper, I think that I've proven that. And there you go, so that's the way that Mvemba's Ninga copies other people's religion. So be careful what you do when you play against him. He'll be sitting there just doing the same thing you do. So it could be a very frustrating match of mirror games. When you play against him, of course, certain decks are better than others at dealing with that. If you have a deck that does none of the things listed on Mvemba's card, then Mvemba is at a clear disadvantage and you don't have to watch yourself at all. You can just do whatever you want and you're not afraid of Mvemba's copying abilities. Let's move on to the other leader of the Kongo, the one that was added more recently, Nzinga Mbande. Her ability is called Queen of Ndongo and Matamba. So here's the concept of continents that we all dread so much. Her cities get massive bonuses when they are founded on her home continent. So basically, she doesn't like to travel, she wants to settle everything at home if possible. If you do found cities elsewhere on foreign land, they get massive penalties. So it doesn't mean don't do it, but do it knowing that your cities will grow much slower. So I had to find a way to turn that into a magic card, and here's what I did. I turned her into a 1-drop powerhouse, overpowered beast. She is called Nzinga Mbande Ngola of Ndongo. For 1 single green, she is an uncommon human rebel noble with stats 1-1, and let's scroll all the way down to her last ability. That's where it says Queen of Ndongo and Matamba. Creatures you control, so including yourself, get +2/+2 and have trample. So we've seen anthems like that before in Magic, but never on a 1-drop card. That is crazy strong, way too strong. But here comes the concept of continence. She has a landfall ability, and it is actually a negative, penalizing landfall ability. When the land enters under your control, put a foreign counter on it. Of course, on its face, those don't do anything, but let's read on. When you cast a creature spell, if mana from a land with a foreign counter was used to cast it, it enters with 5 -1/-1 counters on it. So there you go. It makes it so that all future lands that you play after Nzinga Mbande has joined the fight are considered foreign, and if you use those to cast creatures, those creatures are considered to be on foreign land, and they get a massive penalty. So basically, they still do get the +2/+2 trample, of course, but they get 5 -1/-1 counters to offset that. So if you do the math, they end up -3/-3. With trample, yes, they do still have trample, but they are 3 weaker than they should be, and that might kill them. So creatures you cast with your homelands get +2/+2, and creatures you play with your foreign lands get -3/-3. There you go, I think I pulled it off, I did it, and there's so many things to say about that. Well, first of all, when is the best time to play Nzinga Mbande? Is it the first turn? You could drop her on your first turn with 1 forest, there's your commander, but then you'll only ever have 1 land that is considered your homeland. So can you really rely on that single land? Can you cast some worthy creatures with just 1 land? Then again, maybe you have a creature-less deck, in which case, you don't care. But then again, if you have a creature-less deck, then why is Nzinga Mbande your commander? She has an anthem ability that boosts your creatures, so why did you choose her? It makes no sense. So yeah, that's probably not the right approach. Maybe turn 2 or 3 is the best time to cast her, so by then you have 2 or 3 lands, you can rely on those for your important creatures, and then find other solutions later in the game for your bigger creatures. For instance, you could rely on elves, a bunch of mana ramping that isn't lands. So if you have elves, mana rocks, things like that, mana dorks, that are not lands, then you don't care, really. All of those foreign lands, they don't need to be used to cast creatures. You could use them for something else, for all of your enchantments, sorceries, instants, and anytime that you need to cast a big fat creature, rely on your early game lands that are your homelands and your mana dorks. So maybe there is a way of getting around that, rely on mana dorks. And also find creatures that can't have counters on them. Those are rare, they're not very common. I made one for the Japan set, but unfortunately it's red, so not a good example. But yes, creatures that say this creature cannot have counters on it, or other effects that apply to all creatures that says creatures can't have counters on them, that would definitely break this card. And try to find something that removes counters also, more on that later. Or try to balance out the penalties to your big fat creature by putting +1/+1 counters on them, or, and I'm a big fan of this, try to load your deck with creatures that you actually are trying to kill. Creatures that grant you a huge benefit when they die, eggs, they are often nicknamed. So if they are weak enough, if they are 3/3 or less, then you cast them with foreign mana, they enter, boom, they die right away, and you get your reward. So that's another direction into which you could take that strategy. Or also, maybe you have a creature that is strong enough to survive that -3/-3, and it is in your deck not because of its stats, but because of its abilities. So you don't really care that they are weaker, you just want their abilities to be in play. So that's yet another way of thinking about it. So there you go, not only I'm very proud to have successfully turned the difficult concept of continents into a magic card yet again, and I did it differently than any other time that I've had to do it, but I also created a creature card, a potential commander, that has all of this discussion. We've been talking about her and her only for I don't know how long, but yeah, when a card compels you to discuss so many different strategies, then you know that it's something interesting. Maybe not overly powerful, but something interesting. Obvious powerhouses like the Crater Hoof Behemoth, sometimes they bore me. I'm much more interested sometimes in something that is not obviously powerful, but really versatile and can take your strategy in a number of different ways. And Nzinga Mbande certainly fits the bill. There's something that we forgot to say about the land of Kongo. Do you know why it taps for a green and only a green, not a white? Because I wanted Nzinga Mbande to be able to use it in her 99. So that land requires you to have dead people in your graveyard, exile them, and get huge massive boosts. Well, with Nzinga Mbande as your commander, as we've said, maybe one of your strategies is to cast creatures that you intend to die. You want your foreign land penalties to kill those creatures right away, and maybe one of the reasons that you want that is A, because of their upon death benefits, but then if you also have the land of Kongo in play, if those people are the right kind, clerics, soldiers, legendary, then you right away get to exile them from your graveyard to get the Great Warwick's benefit. So I made especially sure that the land of Kongo was usable in Nzinga Mbande's deck, to have yet another way of using her versatile ability, kill your creatures on purpose upon summoning them in order to exile them to get a Great Warwick that the Kongo cares so much about. Let's take a look at the unique unit of the Kongo. It is the Ngao Mbeba, a melee unit that has extra movement and sight on woods and rainforests, so that was easy to translate that into Forest Walk, very simply. And they get a bonus when defending against ranged attacks, and that was pretty easy as well. Let's take a look at the card. There it is for a single white. Don't worry, it's not overpowered like the commander. It is a human soldier, common for 1/2, with the aforementioned Forest Walk, and when this creature blocks an archer, it gains +3/+3 until end of turn. So there you go, they have a good counter against archers, so it's mighty specific. It's not like Magic has a million tons of archers in the game, but and in this grand Civ 6 project of mine, sure, I've created my fair share of archers, but it's one of those things that, hey, bonus if it ever happens, you don't really care if it never does. The guy is still a 1/2 Forest Walk for 1, and it's only a common. To me, that's exactly what commons really are. Not very versatile, but who knows. In a soldier tribal deck, perhaps. Or perhaps one of those old-timey strategies that involve turning your opponent's lands into specific lands in order to take advantage of a land walk. Who knows? Or if you want to be really creative, turning your opponent's creatures into archers in order to take advantage of that defensive bonus. Who knows indeed. The infrastructure of the Kongo is a neighborhood, a special neighborhood that does not rely on the land's appeal. Which is a shame, because I've turned the concept of appeal into a magic keyword. I have coined my own magic keyword for appeal, but only certain civs actually care about that, and this Mbanza infrastructure goes out of its way to not care about it. A neighborhood normally does, but not this one. This one cares about simply being on a forest, and its purpose, like all neighborhoods, is to increase your population. Therefore, I turned it into a white land aura that enchants specifically a forest, and the enchanted forest has tap, create 2 white 1/1 citizen creature tokens. There's your population growth right there. And the spell cost 1 white and 2 generic for a common. And finally, Nzinga Mbande's agenda is called Decolonization, and I turned it into a card. So basically, in the game, when you play against her as an AI, she wants you to be away. So she wants you to be on a foreign continent. She does not like foreign continents, as we've already discussed, and she's perfectly fine if you are far away on your own land. She does not like it when you share a continent with her. So in this case, I did not involve the concept of continents anymore. I've done it enough already for the Nzinga Mbande card itself. But instead, I turned it into a get rid of all of the evil stuff that I don't want on my lands. It is a uncommon sorcery for 2 green and 3 generic that says, remove any amount of any kinds of counters from any amount of target permanents. So with that, that is yet another way of using the commander's ability. You could remove the -1/-1 counters that have atrophied your foreign land creatures. And even more interesting, you could remove the foreign counters themselves from your foreign lands. So there you go, with that spell, you now have a whole bunch of more lands to use freely. They count as your home land, and you are free, born free as the wind blows, as free as the something else goes. You know, that famous song from that famous Lion movie from the 60s with the famous soundtrack from famous composer John Barry. Anyways, I'm the only one who cares about soundtracks, I can tell. Let's review this decolonization. Yeah, it's another way of taking your strategy, but of course, you can't always count on it. It's lost somewhere in your 99, but it's worth the inclusion, and I betcha there's a whole bunch of decks out there that could find a way of using that interesting piece of work. Not to mention, if your opponent has a deck based entirely on +1/+1 counters, I've got one of those. You play that against me, you've won, essentially. So many of my Hydras or similar creatures are just dead, and you can just finish me off, please. So yeah, if you decolonize me, you've won the game. So yeah, this could be good for her, but also against many different decks. And that completes our very interesting Kongo set. Again, not necessarily the most powerful, but boy, I had fun being creative for this. And let me know if that was enough to actually trigger your imagination, to imagine what kind of decks you would make with either of those commanders if they existed. And would you use any of those other cards in other decks? And especially give me a good thumbs up if you actually know and care who John Barry is.